So you see, when we start digging into things, when you start looking into, where the money is going, where the money isn't going, when you start looking into, okay, how the money was spent, how the money wasn't spent, and not only that, how much money was raised, how much money wasn't raised, you start seeing that things don't add up. The money is moving in ways the money shouldn't be moving, or better yet, no one knows how the money is moving. What's going on, YouTube? It's your host, Bruce GNT, and we're here to talk about what's going on in Baltimore, Maryland. So they have a youth fund, which is like the BCYF, which is Baltimore City Youth Fund. There's been issues for the past, few months or so, where they're trying to figure out, okay, where's the money going? How is it being spent? And how is it raising so much? And, nothing's really being done when it comes to the youth because they still have crime problems related to youth and everything like that. So I'm not going to spoil it. We're going to jump right in.
The Baltimore City Council is set to debate a bill next month that would boost oversight of the Baltimore Children and Youth Fund. BCYF has received tens of millions of city taxpayer dollars in recent years that it's guaranteed annually. However, the fund operates as a nonprofit. Patrick Hoff from our Spotlight on Maryland team has two exclusive interviews with city council members previewing the debate over BCYF.
The Baltimore City Council bill set for its first committee hearing on December 18th would establish new regulations for BCYF, including a required performance audit conducted by the Baltimore City Comptroller every 3 years, starting next year, a ban on BCYF sending money to organizations tied to its board, staff, or their family members. However, the bill is far from finalized.
And I suspect that we're going to have some amendments to the bill. I fully do.
That's Councilman Zach Blanchard, one of 6 co-sponsors of the bill. He said that he and his colleagues are working with a variety of experts on potential amendments.
The original language is complex, so this legislation to adjust it also has to be complex. And so there's going to be all sorts of unintended consequences, and that's why we're trying to do our best to think through them by getting input from nonprofits, from the administration, from everybody.
The bill has the support of 7 council members and is opposed by Mayor Brandon Scott and BCYF. The remaining city council members did not respond to our question asking about whether they plan to support the bill.
So far from what we've heard, it seems like what they're asking is just saying, hey, look, every 3 years you're audited by a comptroller. And then not only that, you can't be tied to giving money to, people that have a close relation to you. The reason they say that is because the mayor didn't really disclose that his wife works for BCYF, I think in a relatively high position. And when it comes to awarding, them contracts and whatnot, they're like, okay, you didn't say anything and you have such a close connection to this person. That looks kind of weird. So the fact that the mayor is opposing this along with BCYF, which obviously because, is against them, investigate that nigga right now. If you are against auditing like an organization that you guys get money from and or give money to, and then your wife has had a connection to that organization, not in a salacious way, but just in general, and you avoiding and or against a bill that makes it so they have to be accountable for their money to show where the money is going, you need to be looked into because that's weird. Remember, this is the same year that has, I think, the $163,000 car and was like, what was needed? Just think about that.
Spotlight on Maryland first reported this year about how the Baltimore City budget sent more than $16 million to BCYF, $7 million of which is then sent to the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. Meanwhile, BCYF's budget for grant-making to local organizations was cut by about $6 million. Mayor Scott previously said he opposes the bill because it would prevent his office from utilizing BCYF funds like it did this year.
The bill right now has some problematic things for me.
However, Blanchard said that's not true.
It's not banning the city from getting the funding. It would just make the city apply.
A point seconded by another co-sponsor of the bill, Baltimore City Councilman Mark Conway.
They would actually have to go through a full application process and be vetted against the other programs that they'd be competing against.
Conway voted against the Baltimore City budget earlier this year, citing concerns about how the mayor's office would receive BCYF money. The councilman said he hopes to work with BCYF on the bill.
So I had a meeting scheduled with BCYF a few weeks ago and they canceled.
We previously sorted through thousands of documents obtained in public information requests that detailed how BCYF spent roughly $300,000 taxpayer dollars in total on trips for its adult staff and grantees to Austin, New Orleans, St. Louis, and Alabama.
You see what I'm talking about? Why do we not have audits for our government and or the entities that work with our government? Because that shit sounds funky as hell. I guess he's misconstruing, and it could be that he doesn't understand. I like to give people grace. I like to give people a little bit of rope. Maybe he doesn't understand the bill, didn't read it a certain way, or whatever have you, because these bills are complicated. Trust me. But they're saying, hey, no, it doesn't stop you from using funds. It just says, hey, when it comes to using it, you have to put in an application process, everything like that, because that's the proper channels to do this. And he's against it. And then not only that, $300,000 for his adult staff. BCYF is Baltimore City Youth Fund. Why is it being spent on adult staff? $300,000? Why is that not used for the youth? Why is it that there's always trips going to places that don't relate to your state and or city? What is going on with that? That's weird. Like I said, people need to be looked into.
Conway expressed concern about the trips, which he said he hopes to see the BCYF bill address.
I think even from just like a narrative perspective, one of the most egregious things that I saw. Now, I don't know how often that happened, and I think it's also part of the problem. We don't have those reports, and it's hard to tell how this money is being spent. We certainly would never want to justify, expensive dinners and, expensive travel if it's not benefiting our young people. That's not the intention here.
Baltimore City Inspector General Isabel Cumming released a report last week that found the Baltimore City Department of Audits has no record of receiving a financial audit from BCYF from fiscal years 2022, 2023, and 2024. The Baltimore City Department of Finance and BCYF have no record of a signed copy of their agreed rules and regulations from 2020, and that only 3 of BCYF's 10 submitted invoices from January 2023 to September 2025 included a list of its taxpayer-funded grantees. Conway and Blanchard said the report may lead to additional amendments to their bill.
I'm still working on what that might look like.
The Inspector General would have good feedback that we need to be aware of as we're adjusting this stuff too.
We'll keep you updated about if the BCYF bill changes and whether it's...
Now, look, we're normal people, all right? We're people that we hear things, we try to process as best as we can, and, a lot of us may not be in the political scheme and everything like that, which is fine. Does some of that spending sound kind of weird and salacious? Yeah, it does, because on the outside looking in, $300,000 for his adult staff, and then seemingly people aren't doing the proper paperwork. No one's, putting in their audits for several years at a time. A few years at a time. I'm not going to say 7. A few years at a time. Is that weird to anybody else? It's weird to me. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, taxpayer funded. Right? Okay. So this is a little bit old, right? Like I said, I like to go through things and make sure that I know what I'm talking about. So my stuff is a little bit old. So there's been sort of update in the regards to when it comes to what BCYF has spent money on, and then in relation to the mayor's office and everything like that. So we're going to jump into that.
Baltimore City Mayor Brandon Scott's office is struggling to explain how it received and spent money from the taxpayer-backed Baltimore Children and Youth Fund.
Patrick Huff has the latest in his investigation into how Baltimore City nonprofits spend taxpayer dollars.
You cannot have money just disappear.
For more than 6 months, Spotlight on Maryland has asked Mayor Scott's office for clarity on its partnership with BCYF, a nonprofit that received $16 million Baltimore City taxpayer dollars this year, guaranteed through the city charter. The mayor's initial announcement in March stated that BCYF provided $6 million for YouthWorks and $1.5 million for the mayor's youth engagement strategy. Meanwhile, BCYF's announcement in April claimed it provided $4.9 million for YouthWorks. The mayor's preliminary budget in April claimed BCYF sent the mayor's office $7 million. And city officials testified at city council hearings in June that BCYF's YouthWorks funding was only $3.9 million. We identified some unanswered questions about this partnership that we hope to resolve in a public information request. We asked Baltimore City for documentation of all the money the Mayor's Office of Employment Development received from BCYF and how it spent those BCYF funds. In response, the Mayor's Office provided documentation of $4.8 million spent on the YouthWorks program that organizes paid jobs for teens and adolescents over the summer. However, there was no documentation of how the remaining money was spent.
This is not...
Where's the money? Where's the money? Come on now. Look, 6 months they've been asking for this and had no response. Look, you juicing the numbers. All right, you're cooking the books. Because why is it that there's so much money that's unaccounted for? Where is that money going? You have it like in the little stock room in the back. Just have it stacked up top there for a rainy day. That's what's going on. Come on now. Don't hit me with this bull crap. People out here are skimming a little bit off the top, and that happens in government, you know what I'm saying? But now it's becoming an issue because people are sitting back going, wait a minute. The numbers aren't adding up. Because you can't say that you're getting all this much and then you keep pulling back, and be like, okay, you started at 6 million, all of a sudden now we're at 4.8 million. Like, where the rest of the money go? Come on now, you got to answer these questions because that doesn't make any sense. That's a little bit weird. Just me personally.
You know, the 1800s where we're supposed to be paying cash for $1 million projects.
That's Mike Watson, a director at the Capitol
Let
Region.
me tell you something. If you have a guy looking into your money and he has the wispies and the hair spread over to try to cover the, let me tell you, you're done. All right, he's gonna find out where it is. He's gonna find where the money is being hidden. He's gonna find out who's using what, who's doing what. I'm telling you right now, I don't know what it is, but them dudes right there, yeah, they don't play. They gonna find out where the money's at.
Center, who tracks ties between governments and nonprofits. He said Baltimore City needs to provide more records about its partnership with BCYF.
The government has a responsibility to make an accounting of it. You cannot have money just disappear or to, have money go in and out the door with there being no record of it.
A spokesman for Mayor Scott told Spotlight on Maryland Tuesday that the total amount BCYF approved to give the city was $5.9 million. This included $4.9 million for YouthWorks and $1 million for the Summer Funding Youth Engagement Strategy, which funded projects such as teen pool parties and rock the block activities. When asked why no documentation of the $1 million was provided in our public information request, the mayor's spokesman said that your request only identified MOAD records and that records from other departments need to be separately requested. The spokesman did not respond to a question about what office managed the $1 million provided by BCYF, meaning there's no way for us to obtain records of how the money was spent. So how did BCYF decide to send money to the city government in the first place? According to its board minutes from April, J.D. Merrill, a representative of the mayor's office, joined the board to answer questions about a potential partnership. Merrill detailed this BCYF board meeting during his testimony at a June city council budget hearing. He said BCYF's board approved $7 million as a one-time investment to help the mayor's office address a budget shortfall.
We presented before their board. Their board heard our request. The board voted to approve the request to invest in our children and youth in this way.
Merrill was promoted to Scott's chief of staff in October. Baltimore City Councilman Mark Conway has been outspoken in his criticism of BCYF sending money to the mayor's office, a disagreement he cited as reason for his vote against the city budget this summer. Conway told us he's had similar struggles getting clarity from the mayor on his partnership with BCYF.
We haven't received any correspondence from the administration about spending on the money since the discussion over the summer.
He said Mayor Scott owes taxpayers an explanation about how it used BCYF money.
YouthWorks is a great program. I would certainly love to see it funded. It's the other money and the lack of clear direction for that money and the lack of accountability for that money that I had problems with.
Spotlight on Maryland previously reported on how BCYF told us in response to a public information request that it had no documentation of money it sent to Mayor Scott's office this year. BCYF President Alicia Lee and Board Chair Larry Simmons did not respond to questions about how much money they sent to the mayor's office. Baltimore City Inspector General Isabel Cumming released a report.
That shit sound funky as hell. Where is the money going? Show me the money. Why is it that, I'm not even going to ask that question. I'm not going to ask that question. What I am going to say is that I am under no illusion that the city council members, maybe not, the gentleman that we saw just now and before, but I'm under no illusion that some of these guys don't know what's going on. I'm under no illusion that some of them are not aware of how money is being moved around, the whispers in the corners, everything like that. This person getting paid. No. You're not going to fool me. I understand. I see it. I hear it. I'm not saying that they are taking money. What I am saying is that it's a little bit weird. It's funky as hell because you got millions of dollars just disappearing. You know what I'm saying? No one has any record documentation of it. No one can answer any question. Everybody's silent.
Last month that found the Baltimore City Department of Audits has no record of receiving a financial audit from BCYF from fiscal years 2022, 2023, and 2024. The Baltimore City Department of Finance and BCYF have no record of a signed copy of their agreed rules and regulations from 2020, and that only 3 of BCYF's 10 submitted invoices from January 2023 to September 2025 included a list of its taxpayer-funded grantees. The Baltimore City Council was set to debate a bill later this month that would establish a series of new regulations and oversight of BCYF, including a required performance audit and restrictions on sending money to organizations tied to its staff and board. The bill has support from 7 city council members and faces opposition from Mayor Brandon Scott and BCYF. 10 votes would be needed to override a potential veto from Scott. We'll have more in the coming weeks on City Council's BCYF.
I'm going to pay attention to this a whole lot more. Why? Because, like I said, y'all can't be using taxpayer money, our money, to what? Fund your own pleasures and delights. Hell no. Hell no. Go out there and get a job your damn self that doesn't rely on the taxpayer. Because that's not what this is about, alright? And in a more serious note, right? And I keep saying it time and time again in videos like these. We need to be more aware and cognizant of what's going on when it comes to our government and how they're spending our money. Because I'm gonna tell you what, they don't have no care. They don't have any care. They're gonna use it, they're gonna abuse it, and then they're gonna sit back and go, "What? Hey, look, we're working for the city. We're trying." No, you're not. No, you're not. All this money being passed around, and yet no one knows what's going on. It's funny how, like, we the more you get into government, the less people know, because all of a sudden now people just can't answer questions. People don't know how to answer the email, how to respond to the email, how to answer the email correctly when it comes to, you know, answering all the questions that was asked in the previous email. You know what I'm saying? It's a whole lot of weird shit. But like I said, I'm gonna be paying attention to this. I'm gonna be looking into this because, yeah, I allegedly, you know, people out here doing some shit they're not supposed to be doing. You know, that's all I'm gonna say. Well, you guys already know the drill. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. Comment down below. Tell me your thoughts. What do you think is going on? And then not only that, do you feel like people are skimming off the top? You know, this is all alleged, by the way. But is that how you feel? Let me know in the comments down below. That's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.